First of all, have fun, man. Try to go out there and try to be patient. Don't try to swing too hard. Try to see the ball first and try to make contact, because when you make contact to a ball, a lot of things can happen. Because when you got good eyes, try to see the ball, try to do other stuff, you're gonna come with edge and better hit it.
It was a little crazy because I wanna get 3,000 hit here in Detroit, so I put a lot of pressure on myself, but at the same time I was like really focused to hit the ball to the other way and get my hits.
Miguel Cabrera is 43 now, and baseball still calls him when it needs someone who understands hitting. He shows up to Detroit spring training. He stands behind the cage. He watches young hitters swing, and he tells them what he sees. The Tigers gave him a job as a special assistant to baseball operations. He teaches hitting, he helps evaluate players, he mentors young talent in the organization, including a prospect named Josue Briceño. He works around Detroit names like Kirk Gibson, Jim Leyland, and Alan Trammell. He is not finished in Venezuela either. He was picked as the hitting coach for Team Venezuela at the 2026 World Baseball Classic. He also agreed to join the active roster of the Tigres de Aragua for that club's 60th anniversary season. The respect is real. If a story like this pulls at you, give this video some hype before we go any further, because the road that brought him here was uglier than most people remember. Here is the part that gets left out of the tribute clips. That respected baseball elder is the same man whose last 7 seasons in Detroit produced a more 256 batting average, a .322 on-base percentage, and a .366 slugging percentage. His OPS plus over that stretch was 88, which means he was below an average big league bat. He hit 65 home runs in 7 full years, and his wins above replacement in that time was negative 5.0. Negative, not average. Not disappointing, below the level of a player you could pull off the scrap heap. For 7 seasons, one of the greatest right-handed hitters who ever lived was worth less than nothing on a baseball field. Detroit kept writing the checks anyway. That is the mystery here. This is a man who won a triple crown. He won back-to-back MVP awards. He finished with more than 3,000 hits and more than 500 home runs. And then he spent the second half of his 30s falling apart in public, while his team paid superstar money for a player who could barely move. Some of that was age. Age comes for everybody. But a lot of it was not just age. There were arrests. There was a blood alcohol reading that shocked people. There was a lawsuit that exposed a private life he had kept quiet. There were conditioning problems. There was a contract that his team signed too late and paid for far too long. The ending was not a graceful goodbye. It was a slow, expensive breakdown. To understand how far Miguel Cabrera fell, you first have to understand how high he stood, because the height is the whole point. He arrived in the big leagues in 2003 as a 20-year-old kid with the Florida Marlins. He was a prodigy. He came up in the middle of the season, and the Marlins went on to win the World Series that year. Most rookies are trying not to drown. Cabrera was helping a franchise win a title. That postseason, he hit big home runs off Kerry Wood and off Roger Clemens. Those are 2 of the most feared pitchers of that era. A kid barely out of his teens stood in against them on the biggest stage in the sport and did not blink. In 5 seasons in Florida, he played 710 games. He batted .313. His on-base percentage was .388. He slugged .542. His OPS plus was 143, which means he was 43% better than an average hitter. He hit 138 home runs and was worth 23.5 wins above replacement. He made 4 straight All-Star teams. Most players spend their first 5 years trying to prove they belong. Cabrera spent his winning a championship, making 4 straight All-Star teams and hitting like a veteran before he could legally rent a car in some places. That was just the warm-up. In December 2007, the Detroit Tigers traded for him. It was a landmark deal, and it changed the franchise. In Detroit, Cabrera turned into the best hitter in baseball. Not one of the best, the best. From 2008 through 2016, he played 1,399 games for the Tigers. He batted .325. His on-base percentage was .404. He slugged .573. His OPS plus was 162, which means he was 62% better than an average hitter over 9 full seasons. He hit 308 home runs. He was worth 48.7 wins above replacement. Between 2010 and 2015, he won 4 American League batting titles. He won 7 Silver Slugger awards over the course of his career, and in 2012 and 2013, he won back-to-back American League Most Valuable Player awards. 4 batting titles in 6 years is not a hot streak. That is a hitter proving, again and again, that nobody in his league could get him out consistently. Pitchers had a whole winter to plan for him. Coaching staff studied video for hours. Teams built entire game plans around keeping the ball away from his bat. It did not work. He kept doing it anyway. Then there is 2012. That season is why people still say his name with a certain tone in their voice. He batted .330. He hit 44 home runs. He drove in 139 runs. He led the American League in all 3 of those categories at the same time. That is the Triple Crown, and it is one of the hardest things to do in the sport. It was the 17th Triple Crown in Major League history. It was the first one in 45 seasons. The last man to do it before him was Carl Yastrzemski, back in 1967. Whole careers came and went in between. Players who were called the best in the world never got close. Cabrera did it in a season where everyone knew what he was chasing, and pitchers still could not stop him. Then he did something almost harder to believe. He got better. In 2013, he set career highs across the board. He batted .348, his on-base percentage was .442, his slugging percentage was .636. He won the MVP again. Think about that. He won the Triple Crown and then had a season that was more efficient than the Triple Crown season. That is the peak. That is the player fans lined up early to watch take batting practice. Pitchers changed their whole plan for one at-bat. Managers walked him with the bases loaded rather than let him swing. He looked untouchable. He was not. Because while all of that was happening on the field, things were going badly wrong away from it. The first big public sign came in October 2009. This was the final weekend of the regular season, and the Tigers were fighting the Minnesota Twins for the American League Central title. Every game mattered. Every hour mattered. That weekend, Cabrera was involved in an alcohol-fueled domestic incident that required police involvement. General manager Dave Dombrowski had to come and get him released after bail. Tests reportedly showed his blood alcohol concentration was 0.26. To put that in plain terms, that is more than 3 times the legal limit for driving. A reading like that is not one drink too many at dinner. It is not a glass of wine with the family. It is a level that most people could not reach by accident, and it happened on a night when his team needed him more than at any other point in the year. Read that again, because the timing is the part that stings. His team was in a division race that would come down to the final days, and their best player was in that condition. Before the 2010 season, he apologized publicly to his teammates and to the fans. He completed a 90-day outpatient rehabilitation program. That should have been the end of it. A scare, a program, a lesson learned. Plenty of players have had a bad night, faced it, and moved on. Cabrera said the right things. He did the treatment. The club stood by him. Here is where his story starts to get complicated, and honestly a little uncomfortable. He did not fall apart afterwards. He got better. In 2010, he finished as the runner-up for the Most Valuable Player award. That is the part that let everyone look away. When a player is producing at that level, the problems can get filed under something else. A rough patch. A personal matter. Something he is handling. Then came February 16, 2011. It was spring training. Cabrera was in St. Lucie County, Florida. A sheriff's deputy found him beside his own disabled vehicle, with smoke rising from the engine. According to law enforcement records, what happened next was worse than the crash itself. Cabrera drank from a bottle of scotch in front of the officer. He used vulgar language. He refused field sobriety tests. He refused a breathalyzer test. He tried to walk into traffic. That is not a bad night. That is a man in serious trouble, in front of a police officer, in the middle of the day, during his own team's spring training. He was charged with driving under the influence. He was charged with open container possession. He was charged with resisting an officer without violence. The case was settled when he pleaded no contest to the driving under the influence charge. He got 1 year of probation. He got a $500 fine. He got 50 hours of community service. The resisting charge was dropped. He was then evaluated by doctors from Major League Baseball and from the Players Association, and he entered structured treatment. Look at those two incidents together. October 2009 and February 2011. That is roughly 16 months apart. A rehabilitation program sat in between them. It did not hold. And this is where the criticism has to be honest. This was not a young man who got unlucky once. This was a pattern that came back after treatment, in a public way, with police involved both times. It also happened at the worst possible moments for his team. The 2009 incident landed in the final days of a division race. The 2011 arrest landed in spring training, the exact stretch of the calendar where a team is trying to set its tone for the year. Both times, the story stopped being about baseball and became about him. There is another thing worth saying plainly. He refused the sobriety tests. He refused the breathalyzer. He drank in front of the officer who came to help him. Those are choices made in the moment, and they made a bad situation far worse than it had to be. This is the part of the story that never fully went away. Years later, when opposing teams were putting together farewell gifts for him, one club handed him a bottle of wine and the room noticed. That is how long a reputation lasts. The strange part is what his bat was doing while all of this played out. Nothing bad. The opposite. The 2009 incident came before an MVP runner-up season. The 2011 arrest came before the greatest 3-year stretch of his life. The Triple Crown came in 2012. The second MVP came in 2013. That is the cruel trick that talent can play on a person. When you are that good, nothing forces you to change. The numbers keep saying everything is fine. The awards keep coming. The contracts keep getting bigger. Nobody in the sport is going to sit a hitter like that down and demand he sort his life out, because he is carrying the whole lineup on his back. So the warning signs got treated as noise. He was Miguel Cabrera. He hit .330 with 44 home runs. Whatever was going on, he was clearly handling it well enough to be the best player alive. That is the illusion this story is built on. Put the two timelines next to each other and it barely makes sense. In the same window of years that included a domestic incident, a rehabilitation program, a relapse, an arrest, and a court case, Miguel Cabrera also won a Triple Crown and 2 Most Valuable Player awards. Most players cannot survive one of those lists. He was living both at once. That is why so many people around the game treated him as indestructible. Not just physically, but in every way. Whatever went wrong, he showed up in April and hit .330. Whatever the headlines said, the ball still left the yard. It was easy to believe that the talent was so enormous that nothing could ever actually take him down. For a while, that was true. Elite ability is a powerful shield. It buys you patience from your club. It buys you forgiveness from fans. It buys you the benefit of the doubt from people who might otherwise ask harder questions. What it does not buy you is time. Because there was one opponent nobody in this sport has ever beaten, and it was already on its way. Age does not care about batting titles. Wear does not care about MVP votes. A body that has been asked to throw a heavy frame through thousands of violent swings will eventually send the bill. And Cabrera's last good year came sooner than anyone expected. In 2016, he played 158 games. He batted .316. He hit 38 home runs. He slugged .563. His isolated power, which measures how much extra base damage a hitter does, sat at .247. He was managing ankle and leg strains through the season, but he was still one of the most dangerous bats alive. He was 33 years old. He looked like a man with 4 or 5 more strong seasons in him. That was his last elite season. All of it. Everything after that year is the story of a great hitter disappearing while still wearing the uniform. Because talent is only strong enough to cover things for so long. Talent does not fix a back. Talent does not rebuild cartilage in a knee. Talent does not slow down a birthday. Cabrera was listed at 6 feet 4 inches. During his playing days, he weighed somewhere between 240 and 240, 67 pounds. He was a big man, and his swing was built on movement. He was a rotational hitter. His power came from his lower body. He generated force by turning his hips ahead of his shoulders and then snapping his wrists through the ball. Almost all of it started from the ground up. His legs and his hips did the heavy lifting, and his hands finished the job. That kind of swing is beautiful when everything works. It is also fragile. If the base goes, the whole thing goes. As Cabrera moved into his mid-30s, age-related changes in his body and ongoing conditioning struggles put extra stress on his lower body and his back. Then 2017 arrived. and the base gave out. He suffered herniated discs in his lower back. In simple terms, the cushions between the bones in his spine were damaged. That limited how far he could bend and twist, and it slowed down how fast he could turn. For a hitter, that is everything. If you cannot turn quickly, you cannot catch up to a fast pitch, and you cannot adjust when the speed changes. So he adjusted the only way he could. He changed his leg stance, he changed how he shifted his weight through the swing, he was trying to hit around the pane. That is where the chain reaction began. A baseball swing is one connected movement. It starts at the feet and ends at the hands. Every part borrows strength from the part below it. When one link in that chain gets weak, the links above it have to work harder to make up for it, and they were never built for that job. When you change how your legs work in a swing, the force has to go somewhere else. It traveled down into his knees, and he developed severe long-term cartilage loss in them. Cartilage is the padding inside a joint. Once it wears down, it does not grow back. He also picked up calf strains and hamstring strains. His 2017 season showed all of it. He played 130 games, he batted .249, he hit 16 home runs, he slugged .399, his isolated power, which is a simple way of measuring raw power, fell to .150. Set that against the season before it. His batting average dropped 67 points, his home run total was cut by more than half. His isolated power fell from 24/7 to .150, which means he lost roughly 40% of his extra base damage in a single winter. 1 year. That is how long it took to go from one of the best hitters in the game to a below-average one. There was no scandal attached to it. No suspension, no holdout. His back simply stopped letting him do the thing he had done better than almost anyone in history. Then it got worse. With his lower body no longer able to do its job, he had to lean on his upper body to create swing speed. He was pulling force out of his arms because his legs could not supply it. In June 2018, his left biceps tendon ruptured. He had appeared in only 38 games. He needed season-ending surgery. That is the moment the decline stopped looking like a slump and started looking permanent. He was 35 years old, and his body had now broken in 2 different places, at the top and at the bottom, in 2 straight seasons. He came back in 2019, but the knees never came back with him. The chronic cartilage loss was still there, and it was not going away. He moved to designated hitter full-time. He stopped playing the field at all. The knee problems took away something specific, and it is worth understanding what. One of the defining features of Cabrera in his prime was his ability to drive the ball the other way, to hit it hard to the opposite field with real power. That takes balance, and it takes a strong base to stay back on the ball. With his knees gone, that skill went with it. There is something quietly sad about becoming a full-time designated hitter. It means the only thing left is your bat. You give the team nothing else. No glove, no position, no innings in the field. Every day, you have to hit well enough to justify a roster spot on offense alone. That is a hard bargain even for a healthy hitter. For a man who could no longer generate power, it was close to impossible. In 2019, he played 136 games, batted .282, hit 12 home runs, and slugged .398. Look at that batting average for a second. He could still put the bat on the ball. What he could not do was hurt anybody with it. Pitchers noticed immediately. They saw that he could no longer turn on hard stuff on the inner half of the plate. So they attacked him with velocity, over and over, and dared him to catch up. That is the ultimate insult in this sport. For a decade, pitchers had tiptoed around him and thrown him junk off the plate because they were frightened of what he could do. Now they were throwing their best fastball right at him and getting away with it. The fear was gone, and once the fear goes, it does not come back. Here is the number that tells the whole story. His isolated power was .247 in 2016. Over his final 5 seasons, it averaged 105. And here is the one that should stop you cold. Miguel Cabrera hit 38 home runs in 2016. Over his final 5 seasons combined, he hit 37. 5 years of at-bats, hundreds of games, thousands of pitches. And it did not add up to one healthy season of the hitter he used to be. That is not a decline. That is a different player wearing the same name on his back. Which brings us to the money, because none of this happened in a vacuum. Detroit was paying for it the entire time. Go back to March 2014. Cabrera still had 2 years left on his existing contract. He was coming off back-to-back MVP awards. He was, at that exact moment, the most valuable hitter in baseball. The Tigers signed him to an 8-year extension worth $248 million. Combined with the money already owed to him, the deal guaranteed him $292 million across 10 years, running through 2023. It was signed under owner Mike Ehrlich, who badly wanted a World Series in Detroit and was willing to spend to get one. The extension locked Cabrera into the franchise for the rest of his playing career. You can understand the emotion behind it. You can also see the mistake in the maths. The problem was the timing. The extension did not actually start until 2016. That meant Cabrera was already 33 years old when the new money kicked in. So Detroit was not paying for the Triple Crown years. Those were already gone. Detroit was paying for his late 30s and betting he would keep producing long past the age when hitters normally stop. That is a bet almost nobody wins. For 1 year, it looked fine. In 2016, at age 33, he earned a base salary of $28 million and produced 5.2 wins above replacement. Using a common valuation of about $8 million per win, that season was worth roughly $41.6 million. That is a surplus of about $13.6 million. The Tigers got more than they paid for. Then the floor fell out, and it never stopped falling. In 2017, at 34, he was paid $28 million and produced negative 0.2 wins. In 2018, at 35, he was paid $30 million and produced 0.1 wins. In 2019, at 36, another $30 million for negative 0.4 wins. In 2020, during the shortened season, his prorated salary was about $11.1 million, and he produced negative 0.2 wins. In 2021, at 38, $30 million for negative 0.7 wins. In 2022, at 39, $32 million for negative 1.0 wins. In 2023, at 40, $32 million for negative 0.6 wins. Every single one of those years was a loss. The estimated deficits ran from roughly $12.7 million in the short season up to about $40 million in 2022 alone. Add it up, and the picture is brutal. Between 2017 and 2023, Detroit paid Miguel Cabrera more than $190 million and got negative cumulative wins above replacement in return. The end of it was quiet. The Tigers declined Cabrera's $30 million club option for 2024 and paid an $8 million buyout instead. That is how the biggest contract in franchise history finished. Not with a decision, with an exit fee. While all of that was going on, his private life came apart in public again. In August 2017, a woman named Belkis Mariela Rodriguez filed a paternity lawsuit in Orange County, Florida. The suit involved 2 children from an extended extramarital affair. She sought as much as $100,000 per month in child support. Before the lawsuit, Cabrera had reportedly been providing somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000 per month voluntarily. He had also purchased a residence worth roughly $1 million and a luxury vehicle. Then the monthly payments were cut to $5,000 while he was working on reconciling with his wife, Rosangel. That is when the formal legal proceedings began. Think about what that sequence actually says. The support was there while the relationship was private. It shrank while he was trying to save his marriage. And the moment it shrank, the whole thing went into a courtroom, where anyone could read it. For a player whose public reputation had been built almost entirely on what he did with a bat in his hands, that was a very different kind of headline. In late 2018, an Orange County Circuit judge issued a ruling. Cabrera was ordered to pay $20,000 per month in formal child support. He was ordered to pay off the remaining mortgage on Rodriguez's home. He was ordered to cover private school tuition and medical care. He was ordered to maintain a $5 million life insurance policy for the children. He was also ordered to provide annual resort passes to Orlando attractions, equivalent to the experiences given to his children from his marriage. That is not a settlement. That is a permanent set of obligations, written down by a court, covering housing, schooling, health, insurance, and holidays for years into the future. And all of it became public record at the exact time his baseball value was falling off a cliff. It is worth being careful here, because it would be easy to draw a line that does not exist. That lawsuit period lined up with the 2017 season, when he batted .249 and the herniated discs took over his swing. Those two things happened at the same time. That does not mean one caused the other. His back injury did not come from a courtroom. What it does show is the shape of those years. This was a man in his mid-30s dealing with a body that was failing, a swing he had to rebuild around pain, a contract he could no longer justify, and a private life that had become a matter of public record. None of it was the version of himself that fans had spent a decade cheering. And it did not stop when he stopped playing. In June 2024, his divorce from Miguel Cabrera was finalized after more than 2 decades of marriage. That was followed by the liquidation of their primary property in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan, worth about $3.48 million. 2 decades of marriage ended after the career ended. Meanwhile, on the field, the last 4 seasons produced one of the strangest contrasts in modern baseball. He was reaching some of the most exclusive milestones in the sport while playing some of the worst baseball of his life. In 2020, the shortened pandemic season, he played 57 games. The man who once led his league in home runs and runs batted in at the same time was now, for practical purposes, a contact hitter with sore knees who could not run the bases well. And he was doing it in the middle of a long rebuild, on money the club had promised him years earlier. That is the cruelest part of this whole story. The milestones were built from a version of himself that no longer existed. He was cashing checks written by a younger man. In 2023, his final season, he played 98 games. He batted .257. He hit 4 home runs, he slugged .353, he was limited to periodic starts at designated hitter. 98 games. 4 home runs. That was the last full year of a man who once hit 44 in a single season and led his league in 3 categories at the same time. He was not being rested for a playoff push. He was being managed carefully because his body could not handle a normal workload anymore. And yet, for all of it, baseball did not turn its back on him. His final season became a farewell tour around the league. Opposing teams honored him with gifts, charitable donations, and pre-game ceremonies. Clubs that had spent years trying to get him out lined up to say thank you. That is not something baseball hands out casually. A farewell tour is reserved for players the whole sport agrees on. You have to have meant something to every city, not just your own, and Cabrera had. Fans in ballparks where he had broken hearts stood up and clapped for him anyway. None of those clubs owed him anything. They did it because they watched him do things they would tell their grandchildren about. After he retired at the end of 2023, Tigers president of baseball operations Scott Harris appointed him special assistant to baseball operations. He teaches hitting and spring training. He evaluates players. He mentors the young talent coming through the system, including a prospect named Josue Briceño. He agreed to join the active roster of the Tigres de Aragua for the club's 60th anniversary season, giving him a chance to play in his home country. Away from the game, his focus is on youth mentorship, his charitable foundation, and his health after years of physical wear. There is something worth noticing in all of that. Every job he holds now is about teaching, hitting instruction, player evaluation, mentoring, a national team, a club in his home country celebrating 60 years. His body took away the swing. It never took away the knowledge behind it, the eye that spotted a pitcher tipping a pitch, the feel for how to sit on a fastball, the understanding of when to shorten up and when to let it go. That does not live in a knee or a spine. That lives in the head, and it is the one asset in this story that never depreciated. His understanding of hitting never stopped being worth something, and the record he built before the fall is still standing. 3,174 hits, 511 home runs, 1,881 runs batted in, 607 doubles, a .306 career batting average, 67.2 wins above replacement, 2 Most Valuable Player awards, 1 back-to-back, 4 American League batting titles, 7 Silver Slugger awards, the 2012 Triple Crown, the first in 45 seasons. He is one of only 3 players in the history of Major League Baseball with a lifetime batting average above 300, 500 home runs, and 3,000 hits. The other 2 are Hank Aaron and Willie Mays. That is the entire list. He is also part of a tiny group, alongside Aaron and Albert Pujols, to combine 3,000 hits, 500 home runs, and 600 doubles. 21 seasons, 2 franchises, one of the greatest right-handed bats the sport has ever produced. Those numbers do not have an expiry date. They do not care what his knees did in 2022. They do not shrink because a contract aged badly. They sit in the record book next to names that children learn before they learn anything else about baseball, and they will still be sitting there long after everyone has forgotten what his slugging percentage was in his final season. Miguel Cabrera could not stop himself from getting older. He made choices that made his life harder and his headlines louder. His back gave out, his knees gave out, and his team spent years paying superstar money for a player who could no longer be one. The ending was ugly, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. But the ending is not the career. He built something so large that 7 bad seasons, a broken body, and a difficult private life could chip at it without ever bringing it down. The fall was real. The greatness was bigger. And that is why, at 43, when he walks onto a field, people still stop and listen.